we had carryover on some of the things we've been emphasizing. Just your habits and your instincts. I think those things, as I said, take some time, and it's good for the guys to get a feel because it's different. It's different in the game, so it was good to play.
Welcome back, Hawks fans. It's your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Bleav in Hawks podcast. We are back again, and this time Hawks preseason has officially started for this team, and the journey now has begun. We'll talk about the game against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the preseason opener. Some good things I saw. We got a Trent Forrest takeover fourth quarter. Who had that on the bingo card? I mean, hey, man, we love to see the development from the guys. A lot of guys stood out in that game. And then we're also going to talk about the new list that ESPN brought out about the top 100 players. We're going to talk about where Hawks are on that list, and just the big one around Trae Young and a couple of people they have ahead of him actually in that ranking. So we're going to talk about all that today on Bleav in Hawks podcast. We're going to have another great show. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody who's tuning in right now to this show, letting me be a part of your day and talk about our beloved Hawks. Or if you're a basketball casual fan and just loves the game and just loves talking ball about other teams, man, definitely appreciate you tuning in. If you're watching me on video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the video, to the channel, post some support. If you're a Falcons fan, I also do Falcons content. So definitely have that here. And if you're listening to me through audio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, whatever you're listening to me on, don't forget to leave a review. Don't forget to give this episode a thumbs up. Give the podcast a thumbs up if you really do like it. Appreciate any support you guys can do. Tell your friends about it. Everything under the sun, man, because we're just here, like I said, just talk about some Hawks basketball and everything like that. So, and obviously, don't forget to follow me on Bricey _2K on Twitter, BRICEY _2K. If you don't see this on YouTube, you can see it at the bottom of your screen. If you're listening to me through audio, I just spelled it out, so you can follow me there. So let's go ahead and dive right into it, man. Hawks win an exciting preseason game opener against the Cleveland Cavaliers, 108-107. A game where we saw basically the new look Hawks, the new Schneider Hawks. First thing that immediately stood out was, I think a lot of people pointed this out, better defensive effort. I think regardless if it's preseason or regular season, you want to show defensive effort regardless of what time of the year it is, because that's something you got to commit to. And if you commit to it early, that can be something that can go into the regular season, and you continue to build through the regular season. Not everything was perfect, but you could see the team was more aggressive on switches. Guys were definitely being disruptive. I think a few guys had a few steals in the game. Trae Young had 3 steals in this game, active with his hands and everything like that. Trying to be effective. Maybe not be a guy who can stop you one-on-one, but someone who could be really good in terms of, able to create turnovers and passing lanes and maybe get a couple of steals like DeJounte Murray was good at last year. So overall, that was the first thing that stood out to me. Also, ball movement looked better. You could see, the different type of sets and things they're using. Now, obviously, this is the preseason, so they're not going to use the boatload of everything they have in there. And there's probably some things that they're still working on right now in camp that they'll continue to work on going into the future. Right now, the Hawks play 3 games in 5 days. They played one of those. They play a second one against Memphis Thursday, and then they'll play another one on Saturday. So, they're pretty much, I think the Nuggets also played for the first time a preseason game yesterday. So, they're kind of one of the last teams to play. Saturday against the Pelicans before they play Indiana next Monday. So, other observations from the game, Saddiq Bey, I want to talk about him. Bey was a guy last year who kind of fell in love if he wasn't shooting threes with the mid-range. Clearly, you can see, if you look at Bey, he's a very well-built person. Strong guy, strong person. He definitely is someone who I think they talked to and said, we want you to use your strength. We want you to use your size to your advantage. And Bey was driving in this game, fighting off contact and getting buckets. And if Bey can do that, man, that in and of itself, especially in a contract year for him, that just adds to his game. That's going to be big. Because like I said, Bey pretty much was a shooter pretty much in all aspects of the word last year. So if he's able to kind of start creating contact, scoring off contact, that just adds an extra element to his game outside of being a three-point shooter, a guy where if you get him off the three-point line, he's not afraid to go into the paint, make some content, and make a couple of buckets. And I think that was something that I saw a couple of Hawks fans on Twitter last night talk about how Bey fighting contact, scoring off contact, that those are the types of things you want to see that. I mean, you saw he improved in, because like I said, you didn't really see that a lot last year with Bey. And so the fact that he's doing that now is something I think that a lot of Hawks fans were really pleased about. We had 2 inactives in this game. DeAndre Hunter and Bogdanovich. A lot of people were, when they saw the starting lineup, and because the starting lineup was Trae, DeJounte, Bey, Johnson, and Capella, people were like, is Snyder benching Hunter? Is he really going to start Hunter off the bench? I told people to calm down. He's not hurt. I'm sure with, again, them playing 3 games in 5 days, they're not trying to, especially with Bogey. I mean, Bogey, everybody pretty much knew, like, you know, he's going to have those games where he just doesn't play. Like last year, he really didn't play in back-to-backs. Like, he's not, especially, and he just played FIFA. So there also may be extra caution there with him to make sure that he doesn't extend himself too much. But Hunter, everybody was wondering what was going on with that. After the game, Snyder basically said he's going to play Thursday. So that squashed, done. Like, you know, I think people wondering, is he not going to start? No, I think realistically, again, Quinn Snyder has said they're going to experiment with things. They're going to try some things. They're going to look at some different things during the preseason. I think your starting 5 will be the same starting 5 outside of John Collins not being there. You just got to figure out who's going to play 4 and 5. I mean, the 4. Because, well, I mean, shoot, some people want the 5 changed after what we saw in the preseason game, and I'll get to that in a second. But, you know, you got to think about who's going to be your 4, Bey or Jalen Johnson. I've always said I think it's going to be Bey just because I feel like they want spacing in that starting unit. Jalen's not really a great shooter, even though he can create spacing because of his passing and because he can kind of operate from different parts of the floor, but they may want that shooting in that lineup with Bey. But like I said, we'll see when, you know, maybe through preseason, or we'll see when regular season hits, game 1 hits. But yeah, so back to the game. I think Trae played well. I like the fact that Trae, even though he took 5 threes, only made 1. Trae was very, you can tell one thing Quinn Snyder wants is he wants them to take quick shots, quick decisions. And this is something he's mentioned. This is something I've mentioned. Trae was hesitating, like, do I want to take this 3? He kind of just was like, when he said I'm taking the 3, he committed to it and took it. And that's what Quinn wants his players to do. He wants them to be committed to taking those shots, getting them up, you know, and just, you know what I'm saying? Like, he would rather them be confident in taking that shot and get as many up as they can than hesitating. Oh, I don't know, because then that can stagnate the offense, because then now you're not making quick decisions. The defense can get more set, and that can create issues. The Hawks as a total took 41 threes last night. So, you know, high value, only hit 12, but, you know, again, you had every single player playing, but overall, you know, that's what he wants. I think they had close to 30 in the first half in terms of getting them up. I think I could be wrong. But overall, yeah, they definitely, you could see the confidence. DeJounte putting them up, Bey putting them up, Trae putting them up, Onyeka Okongwu. Listen, before I get into Onyeka Okongwu, I got to tell y'all a little story about what happened to me at Kroger. So, you know, I just randomly was like, I need something cheap to eat, whatever. Went to the, you know, Kroger deli, got me a little meal, $7 meals that they have. So got me a $7 meal. Guy rang me up. He put the little sticker on there. He gave me the quarter chicken breast. That's $2.37. I said he gave me a deal, basically, because, you know, when you scan it, you know that joke people like saying when I scan a PS5 as like a banana, you know, that's basically what happened, basically. So I scanned it out, and I said, before I left, I said, you're feeding families. And then you know what Onyeka Okongwu's doing, hitting those threes? He's feeding families. Onyeka Okongwu, keep feeding me threes, man. I love it. I was all over Onyeka Okongwu last year when he was hitting mid ranges. Now you're telling me Onyeka Okongwu is a good 3-point shooter? That man has made rapid improvement in his shooting over the last 2 off seasons. I mean, because the thing about him is you can even see his form and how he sets up to shoot. He kind of has that shooter. You gotta have your hands out as a shooter. Like, you kind of want to have him out and catch it and release. That's kind of how Yucca Okongwu did it. And he was making them, man, 2 or 3 last night. If Yucca Okongwu can do that, man, that makes him just that much more dangerous as a player. And one thing he wanted to work on this offseason was his ball handling and his shooting, because if he's going to be from the basket more, again, you want to be dangerous at the 3-point line, but then if they try to collapse, you get to the paint, and we saw that when he hit the Euro step in this game, coming down the lane, hit the Euro, got the crowd, got the bench going crazy. Yucca Okongwu, everybody, really developing that offensive game that, I've always felt like he seems like he has a lot of offensive potential. His great touch of the rim, and I think you're seeing it through his shot. I think his great touch of the jump shots. And I think that's why he's not, I guess, going through as much of a learning curve trying to be able to do it. Now, obviously, the big thing that came from that clearly is, again, Yucca is kind of entering a kind of sort of contract year a little bit. They have to make a decision on him. He's making all these strides. He's continuing to improve. A lot of people were wondering about the center position and saying, okay, if Yucca is going to be like this, he has to start, right? At some point, right? Like, you would have to think we're gonna give him that nod. And it's a good point. It's a good point. The thing is that I think the thing with Capella when it comes to that center position is you got to understand the Hawks look at Capella as he's their tallest center on the roster. Good shot blocker. He's been one of the best rebounders in the game since he's been in the league. Even though Yucca Okongwu is a good rebounder, everybody knows Clint Capella has those 20 rebound games sometimes. He'll have them more often than Yucca. Not saying that Yucca can't. Yucca, I think, has had one before, or has had very close to a 20-20 game before, or 20 rebound game. But if not already. But the one thing I think that stands out to me when it comes to the center position is that because of that, that's why I don't think they're in this ultimate rush to take Capella off the bench, and they're okay letting Capella start, because this could turn into a situation where Capella, if this is what Clint Snyder wants to do, Capella could start games, and then you have Okongwu finish him. Potentially. Now I feel like you can really do that based off matchups. If you're going against a bigger basketball team, then yeah, you may be like, all right, Capella probably needs to finish this game. If you're going against a smaller, more athletic, more got team like that, like Golden State usually is, probably Okongwu would be your best bet to me. And that could be what they're doing. But Clint may start games. I think that, because Clint pretty much is, like I said, Clint is who he is. Clint was taking a lot of threes yesterday. He took him at open practice. He took him in warmups. I don't know if that's something that Snyder has mentioned to Clint of just improving his shooting touch. I could see that being something they said, hey, can you improve your shot? Obviously, we know you're not going to be a shooter, but maybe improve your free throw shooting, just improve your shot in general for that reason. But overall with Clint, I think, everybody's going to have their gripes with him, because offensively we say he misses bunnies sometimes and he's not always the most effective guy on the floor. And he has some games where he's kind of off. But at the same time, he has those games where, like I said, you have 20 rebounds, a couple of block shots, and really be active. And I think that's where you have that love-hate with Clint Capella. But after what you saw with Okongwu last night, you're probably like, damn, I really, really like what, I saw from him. And it gives you more confidence where if they ever needed to go to Okongwu as a starter or just to play him more minutes potentially in a game, you feel very confident when Okongwu can bring to the table, because I feel like he can develop into a Quinn Snyder player. So I think that is something to me that will be interesting to see along those lines with them. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that looks. Other things, Jalen Johnson, I think he looked good. You can see with some of the sets, they had him at the top of the key a lot. They had him kind of in a position where he can use his playmaking more. Glenn Willis, a guy who great follow on Twitter, really breaks down the game really well, and especially the Hawks, talked about it on his Twitter feed about how just you can tell some of the stuff they're running is to help him with his playmaking so he can be effective in different ways. But he said that one thing that Jalen needs to improve on is being able to take a defender and still make a play. You know how you drive to the rim, but you can still play make. That's something Jalen needs to continue to improve and continue to work on. And I think that's something that I think I agree with wholeheartedly. I think, that's something that will take him to the next level if he's able to take guys off the dribble, but also still be able to have the vision to find guys. You can see his passing on display a couple of times, the alley hoop to Yeka Okongwu. He had one over into the corner. He really is a really gifted passer. And I think he just adds another threat to the floor in terms of playmaking for this team when certain possessions break down and things and everything like that. Overall, other standouts, obviously, I know it's been 15 minutes and I haven't talked about Trent Forrest. Don't worry. Trent Forrest went crazy in the fourth quarter. You can tell Trent Forrest really worked on his game, man. Like, one thing about Trent Forrest when he got caught up from the Skyhawks, one thing about him is he's known as a defender. He knows he makes his bread on the defensive end. He is a bigger guard who can defend guys. But he was kind of a guy with a scouting report that was kind of like the offensive game is where it was left to be desired. There wasn't a lot of offensive juice there really at all. And you could kind of see that when he played last year for us. He really didn't bring anything offensively to the table. It was kind of like you're getting a Thabo Cephalosha or a Andre Roberson type of player. Like, if he ain't defending that well, he kind of don't do nothing for you. And in this game, he's shimmying, he's crossing up a good one step. I'm in touch at the rim floaters, and you're just kind of like, hey, yo, like where did this come from? And I know he's playing against the Cleveland's C and D teams or whatever you want to say. But he really, even in the college Skyhawks, really never showed it to that extent. And Trent's a guy who's worked on his game every offseason. So he's a guy who clearly said, okay, I know I make my money defensively, but I need to get in the gym and get that offensive game right. Because then now, if I could at least be somewhat of a threat in some capacity on the floor offensively, that can get him more minutes and a more permanent and maybe just a better role on a team. And obviously on the Hawks, like, you would think he wouldn't be the third point. I think that's either going to be Patty Mills or Kobe Buffkin. But I think what Forrest is saying is that maybe you can keep him on the end of the bench, and if you ever just want to switch it up one day, because like I said, he is a bigger guard. You just need some defense. He's a guy that you can put out there, and then he also could provide something to you as well offensively. Obviously, we'll have to see that against ones and the ones for other teams, but it's just something that, to keep in mind to see that type of performance of him going head to head with Emoni Bates on Cleveland. We all know Emoni Bates, if you're a hooper and you're a hoop fan, Emoni Bates can hoop. He's a confident kid. You saw it when they played Cleveland on Tuesday. But you could see like the talent there. You could see what they were doing there. And I think that's really big for them. The fact that Trent was able to go toe-to-toe with a guy, hit a clutch shot like he did in the fourth quarter, getting a foul. I think they called it on Sharif, and just really being able to kind of take over a game. That's not someone you would think as a guy who would take over a game, Trent Forrest. So it was really great to see that. And then big shout out to Seth Lundy too, man. He came in there and hit some big threes. That's one thing Lundy going to be able to do. I've said this. He's going to be able to shoot. His game is easily translatable to the NBA with that. He will be able to play. The biggest thing I think with Kyle Korver working with all the rookies, and especially Seth, is that he's just trying to develop other parts of Seth's game. Right now, he can shoot right now in the NBA. But we need to give him extra. Can you do more? Because then whenever that time comes where they're like, hey, Seth, if it's with the Hawks and they're like, we need you to, be a part of this rotation, it gives you confidence if he develops that game that, he could be a very big contributor in that rotation and be someone who could really contribute for the Hawks. So the fact that he was able to make some big shots coming into the game, he only played 8 minutes last night, was really big to see. And then we'll get to the last rookie here. Muhammad Gay played, and I know that one was a little bit interesting. You could tell coming into the game he got a delay a game because he didn't have his I think he didn't have his jersey tucked in. And so, I mean, I said, oh, he's nervous, ain't he? You can tell he's nervous. And indeed, he was nervous. And listen, I get it. You're playing your game for the first time, man. You playing an NBA. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though it was preseason, it's still something that could be nerve-wracking for any player, any young player. And I think for him, it was big because at least he was able to get that run. He was able to play. He was able to get that, ability to kind of get out there, see how it's like. He seemed a little excited, seemed a little overwhelmed, but I don't want people to be concerned because I think, again, he's one of those guys. Remember, he's the most least experienced basketball player on this entire roster. I think he hasn't played basketball that long in just his entire life. So getting to this level, I'm sure, is a little bit different from him. But I think he'll get more comfortable as time goes on. Trae Young mentioned him as someone who really stood out in scrimmages in training camp so far. So clearly he's been able to hold his own against the Hawks' main guys, starters, and second bench unit. So I don't think it's something we should be concerned about. Definitely maybe want to see a bit more from him. I'm curious to see how he performs against Memphis and then against New Orleans. But really good to see him get some run. I mean, you could see his athleticism a little bit on display. You can see a little bit of his ball handling a little bit. You can kind of, it's like with him, you can see the talent. You can see the talent. And now it's just a matter of getting, again, he's a project. He's a guy who you really feel like if you put that work into him, he'll end up being a pretty good player in this league. He has the tools. Super tall kid, athletic, can dunk, can shoot, but you can tell, like I said, last night he seemed nervous. I think his first shot was a three, hit the side of the backboard. I mean, not the side, but like he basically didn't hit rim. And so you could tell, like, all right, yeah, he's a little nervous. But I mean, that's just playing through jitters. I'm not at all concerned about that. It's just part of the game. And I think he'll feel better and get more confident as time goes on. And then Kobe as well seemed confident. Yeah, look, one thing about Kobe, man, he's a very confident player, man. He's gonna play confidently. He's gonna get shots up like Snyder wants. He's a guy who I think really he's gonna be interesting. He was kind of used mainly as a 2 last night, which he was drafted in draft circles was considered a combo guard. Played mainly point at Michigan, but Quinn may use him more as a 2 kind of here. And I think that's why some people, I asked the question, they think Patty might be the PG3 truly, potentially because of that. But Kobe looks good. Kobe looks confident. And that's what you really want to see from the guys. I mean, like I said, I think everybody's kind of been like, I like the rookies this year. And I think that's why, is that they're all competitive. They all have their different strengths and they all can impact the game in different ways. And I think the players see, oh, these guys can be good. And so I think, again, with this development system that they're implementing here, I think that's going to be big for the Hawks moving forward. And just overall, you saw the ball movement last night. You saw the cuts. You saw off-ball Trae. You saw a lot of different things that Quinn wants to do. And it's just one of those things they got to keep doing and keep getting repetition doing. And once they do that, as the season continues, it'll improve. It'll get sharper. It'll get better. And like I said, we haven't seen everything. So it's going to definitely start to stand out more as time goes on. Now, let's get to this NBA list. So, ESPN every year brings out these top player rankings, 100 this year, just top 100 players in the game. They did one last year, they won the last couple of years. Obviously, a lot of people don't like the list. Some people think, whoa, da, 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 da. So, in terms of the Hawks, they have 3 people on this list this year. Trae, DeJounte, Capella. But let me make sure that I'm actually right about that. But those are the 3 that I remember being on the list. And one of the things I think that got people kind of riled up a little bit was the fact that Trae, first Trae was ranked higher on the list, first of all, last year. Then he dropped down, right? Whatever, dropped down. But the thing that I think people have looked at is why is guys like Lauri Markkanen ahead of him on that list? Listen, Lauri Markkanen is a great player, so I'm not even out here trying to make it seem like it is Cabell, but like he's not worth being on the list. I just think to say Lauri Markkanen is better than Trae Young is insane, and I think this is part of the agenda. A lot of people feel like a lot of people are underrating Trae Young because he was 16th on the list in 2022. Now he's 29th. And you got guys ahead of him like Lauri Markkanen, Drew Holiday. Interesting. You know, some people think even Sabonis or Tyrese Halliburton, Karl-Anthony Towns. They're good players. But, you know, some people bat an eye a little bit when they see it. Like, really? And this, just like I said, goes into the perception of Trae in the media. There's always been this agenda of that, you know, the media underrates Trae and they don't appreciate Trae. And a lot of people think he's overrated. A lot of people think, oh, he's not that good, blah, 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 whatever. And the thing is like, I've always said the fact that Trae has been able to do what he's done at his size is extremely impressive and shows the skill he has in this game. But at the same time, it feels like a lot of people in the media use his size as the reason why he's not rated highly. And for me, I'm just like, that makes no sense because he's averaging 25 and almost 10 at his height and doing what he's been doing, and he's considered one of the players in the game, and et cetera, et cetera. But yet we look at Trae, and so many people are just not high on him. And I think this list made people feel like that some of the names ahead of him is just kind of like, really? Like Lauri Markkanen wasn't even on the list last year, and now he's ahead of Trae Young. And I think a lot of people are just kind of shocked by that. Because Trae, what he does, because the thing is, Trae has to do so much for this team. He did so much for this team. And hopefully with Quinn Snyder coming into the fold, that changes a little bit this year. That's not what the Hawks need as much this year as he's done in previous years. But for him to do what he's done these last few years and for him to be rated like this is kind of insane. And this isn't even me being a homer. This is just like, I mean, I'm a lover of the game of basketball. And I know what Trae brings to the table. Like, people, like I said, especially like last year, I think is really when it stood out with this agenda with Trae. All these negative articles and all these people saying, oh, he don't play no defense. And, and this is why he can't be good. And Jalen Brunson's better than him. And And I'm just like, where do y'all get, like, he's had a great playoff performance. He's been to East Conference Finals. He averages 25 and 10, 30 and 10. He does all these things. And yet, for some reason, it's like it doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. Like, oh, it's meaningless. And I'm like, why? Because technically, you can make an argument it should be harder for him to average 25, 30 because of his height. And he's one of the best, if not top 5 passers in the game. I think there was something else that came out. And I remember scrolling over. I didn't really read into it a lot, but I think there was another top 5 passers list, and Trae wasn't even on there. And I think people were just like, yo, like, Trae is really getting no love from the media in any capacity. And I was like, yeah. Trae just is not getting the appreciation as a hooper that he is like other players are. And listen, I've told people this before, covering the Hawks. I'm actually covering them for 4 years now. It's kind of crazy. I've covered them, I think, since not 4, I think 3 seasons. This is my 4th season coming up. When I created, my content for the Hawks, when I would sometimes bring up the Hawks to people in the industry, just, to bring them onto the show, I always sometimes felt like people didn't take it seriously, or they're like, "Oh, I don't really have time," or "Oh, nothing." I could feel the vibe of like the Hawks aren't important. Why do I want to talk about them? Because that's how a lot of people in the media feel about the team. Is just like, who cares? And so for me, I've always kind of had an issue with that because, you know, I my only criticism sometimes of journalists in the game is that sometimes I question how much they live a hoop. Like they might like, do you just love the business or do you love the game? Do you love the business of being on TV or being a top writer and writing about it and things like that because you know it's going to get you clicks and it's going to get you views and people know you for it? Or do you also love the game of basketball? You love just watching the hoop. You love watching the teams. You love watching different players. Because if you love the game, I don't see why obviously I'm not saying if you're a regular fan, if your favorite team be the Hawks or anything like that. But like, you shouldn't appreciate certain players because like oh man, this guy can hoop. This guy can really do something. This guy can really stand out. And sometimes I just feel like I talk to people in the industry and they're just kind of like, who cares? And I think that reflects in guys like Trae, where they're just like, they'll hear Trae Young and it's like, 30 and 10, bleh. Okay. Jalen Brunson drops 30 and 10 and the Knicks win. Oh my God, Jalen Brunson is elite. Jalen Brunson is a top 5 point guard. He's one of the best point guards in the Eastern Conference. Because if you know the Knicks machine, any success they have, they're pushing to the moon. And again, this isn't a shot at Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is a really good player. I know he's a really good player. He's a short point guard, just like Trae, doing what he's doing. So I don't at all discredit him, but I'm just saying like the love in the media with Trae is not the same with other players, and a lot of it also has to do just because he's on the Hawks, and I feel like that's messed up. Like if a player is doing great things, you should appreciate him for doing great things. That's all I'm saying. I don't think that's insane. I think that should be something that should definitely be acknowledged. I sometimes just don't get sometimes the thinking on um why we rate him so lowly sometimes. Because he, like I said, I mean he pretty much is she's like, obviously he wants to improve his shot, but one of the best playmakers in the game, still can get you 25, 30 on every given night. You saw what he did in the fourth quarters against the Boston Celtics last year, the type of player he can be. And I just don't see how people look at that and think, I mean, he's a decent player. So I'm not, not gonna go any further with it, but just, in general, I kind of see the outrage. And listen, I'm excited for this year because I think Trae Young's gonna prove a lot of people wrong. I think Trae Young's going to remind a lot of people why, he was as good as advertised coming out of Oklahoma, why he got us to East Conference Finals a couple of years ago. I think he's going to remind us all this year with the system that Quinn Snyder now he has a coach who can maximize his skills and help put him in position to be even better than what he was before. And that's realistically something that I really do look forward to when watching this team this year. So definitely look forward to seeing that. But overall, like I said, good win against Cleveland, preseason wise. Saw some good things. We'll see how they do against Memphis. We'll see how they do against New Orleans, and we'll see how they do against Indiana as time goes on. So, it's preseason. Don't want to get too deep into things. Don't want to read too deeply into things. It's just good to see a lot of the young guys play and see how they do, and then just kind of see what lineups and different things that Quinn Snyder plays with as this preseason goes on, as we get closer to the regular season. But That's all we got today, guys, for you guys. Like I said, appreciate you guys tuning into the show. Don't forget, follow me on Twitter, Bricey_2K, BRICEY_2K. If you listen to me on audio, subscribe to my YouTube if you want to see the video version of these shows. Also, Bricey_2K. Do Falcons content as well. So if you want to check that out too, if you're on the channel, definitely do that. Like, subscribe, share, everything under the sun. Audio wise, same thing. Leave review, leave your comments, and just really appreciate you guys for, like I said, everybody who listens to me, I appreciate you just letting me be part of your day and let me talk Hawks hoops with y'all. I got some plans coming up, guys. We're gonna get some other people on the show here. I was just trying to get us into the regular season. We're gonna have some people from around the Hawks content creation community, some people from companies in the league, on the show in the future. So I definitely got some things in the works for you guys. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me and riding it out with me as we continue to get through that period of this podcast. And appreciate Bleav once again for giving me the platform to talk about Hawks with all of you Hawks fans today. So, like I said, it's your boy Bryce Lewis. See you next time.